Okay, we are going to call this meeting to order. It is 6:30 p.m. Notice is hereby given that this is a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Sandy Oaks, Texas, being held today, Thursday, August 27th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. by telephonic video conferencing for the purpose of considering the following agenda items. All agenda items are subject to action. In accordance with the order of the Office of the Governor issued March 16th, 2020, the City Council of the City of Sandy Oaks, Texas will conduct a telephonic video meeting in order to advance the public health goal of limiting face-to-face meetings, also called social distancing, to slow the spread of the coronavirus. There will be no in-person public access to the meeting. A recording of the telephonic meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Texas Public Information Act upon written request. Ms. Shelton, can we get a quorum call, please?
Yes, Alderman Yelton.
You're on mute. Oh, there you go.
Alderman Yelton.
Here.
Thank you. Alderman Rapino.
Here.
Alderman Walker.
Here.
Alderman Fillinger. Mr. Fillinger.
Here. Here.
Alderman Tremblay.
Here.
And we do have Cassandra's on the line.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. You do have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. Item 2 is citizens to be heard. Ms. Shelton, did we get any citizens to be heard requests?
No, we did not.
Okay, we'll go ahead and pass on that one. Item 3, consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council of the City of Sandy Oaks and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. We had 2 items: approve the minutes from July 23rd, 2020 regular City Council meeting and approve the minutes from the August 13th, 2020 regular council meeting. Do I need to pull item B? Okay, we'll pull item B. That one's not complete yet. So we're left with item A. And if anyone would like to make a motion on the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Well, we can't do all of it.
I am sorry. I move that we approve item A from the consent agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion by Alderman Fillinger to approve item A on the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Alderman Walker. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And can we do the hand raise as well?
Aye.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, the motion carries. We'll move on to item 4A. We have, has Jared joined us? I see Lisa is on. Lisa, was Jared going to join us or were you going to present?
Jared's on.
Oh, I just don't recognize him. Okay, so item 4A, presentation from M&S Engineering on proposal to finish out the construction phase of the services needed for the Sandy Oaks Animal Control Facility project and possible discussion and action. So we do have Lisa Jaster and Jared Mott from M&S Engineering, and I asked them to join us so Jared could kind of go over what this final task order entails, what's required to finish this project out. We also have, George. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on your last name, George. I'm sorry. From Force Asset Management.
That's correct.
And he is the project manager on the project. So Jared, we'll turn it over to you and let you get started.
All right, can you hear me?
I can.
All right. This proposal is for to finish out the construction phase services for the animal control facility. And there's not too much left to do on it. I have 7 items listed that I can think of. It's review the submittal of the AFC panel for general conformance, attend a final completion walkthrough, create a final change order for the final payment application if needed, review and approve the final payment application, provide closeout documentation and engineer acceptance letter to city, obtain the maintenance and warranty bond from the contractor, and prepare as-built record drawings based on the contractor red lines. So all of this is for hourly not to exceed $2,000 plus reimbursables, and the only reimbursable that we will have is just vehicle mileage, and that will be less than $60.
Okay, Jared, thank you. Can we kind of go over the 7 items that you went through under construction administration and kind of explain for those of us that aren't familiar with how all this works, what each of these means?
Sure. I guess so. The contractor submitted a electrical panel, and that's I guess the one item that's taken a while to be delivered. We just want to do a quick check to make sure that that meets the code. Item number 2 is attend a final completion walkthrough. So essentially looking at everything that they've done, and that's the time when if there's any issues with the construction that's been done, to make a punch list, bring it up, or otherwise the city would accept the product that's been provided. So there's a final payment application that'll be provided by Force Asset Management, and if we need to do any changes to that, that'll warrant a change order, which we'll provide. Otherwise, it'll just be doing that final pay application and doing retainage on that, paying out the retainage. The
What is the
closeout
retainage?
documentation.
Jared, I'm sorry, what is retainage?
So the retainage is it's money that's being withheld from the contractor until the project completion. This project in particular, I believe, is 5%. So once everything is being closed out, the final payment, so to speak, the contractor will get paid that 5%.
Okay.
There's closeout documentation as well, per the contract documents standard EJ/CDC. There's a final substantial completion form that'll close out the construction period and kick it into any final adjustments that need to be made based on a punch list if there's anything. And then at the end of that, there'll be an acceptance letter to the city just saying that everything that has been done is, I guess, complete to our understanding.
Okay.
The contractor is going to be providing a maintenance and warranty bond that essentially gives it provides a warranty for the work that's done. So they stand behind everything. And we'll make sure that that's taken care of and get that over to you. That way, if there's any issues in the future, you'll be able to take care of them. And then the final one is prepare as-built record drawings. This is plan that will be provided to the city that shows the location of the utilities as they've gone in the ground, and that's the information that the contractor would provide to us, just saying we went this route, or if there's any changes during the project. I know that there's some slightly different alignments that have occurred, so it would reflect the utilities and things that were done as they are in the ground. So,
Okay.
and in the future, you'll be able to use that and build off of that.
Okay. And it's George Wilburn from Force Asset Management. I knew your name, I was just drawing a blank. Are you in agreement with all of these final items that are needed, or is there something you'd like to add, or things, any of this already been completed?
No, ma'am, that's pretty much it for completing the project. The one thing we have outstanding is that AFC panel, and then just the other items he was listing were just standard per contract.
Okay, and I know the panel, is that the same panel that very early on, right about the time the project started, there was a message from either yourself or the other lady about a back order due to manufacturing delays? Is that what this particular piece is?
Yes, ma'am, it's the same one that's been painting our side for a while now. The manufacturer of that panel just had setbacks due to COVID. We've kept in constant communication with them and updated you all probably within the same hour that we received something. Betty Hernandez, the project manager, actually was forwarding over to the engineer as well as yourself and your staff, showing a little update on that. Is it was scheduled for delivery 8/31 was the last thing we heard. We just found out that it was 8/31 was when it was supposed to be here. We just found out this morning that it's out for delivery today.
Hey,
So it should be at
Wow.
9 p.m. tonight. The electrician is aiming to be on site Sunday and Monday to finalize that portion of the work. And then CPS has assured us that within 24 hours they'll be able to hook up the services.
how long? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
About 24 hours after we call it in, we finalize with them, they can have the services hooked up.
Perfect. Okay, so we're a little ahead of our delayed schedule. I mean, that was out of everyone's control, but
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
better than the 21st. I mean, the 31st. We're probably still going to hit that roughly, but that's better than it arriving on the 31st.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then I know at our last meeting, Jared, there was a discussion about a fee on the first pay application for $1,000 for some trenching work. Can we get an update on that, please?
As of right now, we've done no work on that, and if these construction phase services go through, we can discuss that with the contractor. There is a final pay app that we can work everything out in. So,
Would that require a change order?
The change order would be for, I guess, finalizing the amounts. If everything does get paid out on this pay app, if we plan to remove some or all of that, yeah, we'd want to do a change order just to make sure that that item reads 100%.
Okay, and George, are you in agreement with that?
I agree, it's a topic of discussion.
Okay, well,
Removal of it. But yes, I agree, it's a topic of discussion.
okay, and you'll have that discussion with Jared on that?
Do it?
Okay. Okay, is there any aldermen on the call who have any questions related to this project? I do not see any hands. Well, then we will move on then. I'd like to thank George for joining us, and Jared and Lisa as well. We'll move on to item B, which is to discuss under possible action on task order TA015 from M&S Engineering. All the council members, as you heard, what this task order is for, and it is written as a total of $2,000 plus reimbursables. And Jared indicated the reimbursables would be mileage at probably less than $60. Would anyone care to make a motion on that? I see Alderman Tremblay has his hand raised. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Mayor, move to approve task order TA-015 for cost not to exceed, let's say, $2,100.
Okay. Alderman Bellinger, go ahead, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I would second the motion that we approve the task order not to exceed $2,100.
Okay, so we have a motion by Alderman Tremblay and a second by Alderman Bellinger to approve task order TA-015 at a cost not to exceed $2,100. All in favor say aye and raise your hand as well, please.
Aye.
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 I see 5 hands and 5 ayes. Okay, that motion carries. Jared, thank you for joining us. We will get this task order signed and off to you in the morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for participating. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to item 4C, presentation from GrantWorks on grant opportunities for the community and possible discussion or action. And we have with us Natalie, who is from GrantWorks, and she's gonna, Catherine, she's gonna make her a presenter, please, so that she can present her information. And Natalie, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to what you have to share.
Oh, thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to be here. Thank you, Council. I appreciate the opportunity. GrantWorks is, I'm going to just kind of jump straight into this. I did provide some binders ahead of time. I'm hoping everybody brought theirs. I'm going to try to go through them as quickly as possible. This presentation is typically made to last a while, but I'm going to condense that. So I'm hoping that you get the most out of the information I deliver today. And if you have questions, feel free to ask me at any point in time. I will give my contact information in the binder. And then of course you can submit any questions that you may have later on down the road after you've had more time to digest the information in the binders.
Natalie, can I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
Sure. No, go
Do you
ahead.
have a presentation that you wanted to share, or would you like me to share that which you sent to Mickey and me?
I'm going to do a screen share.
Okay, it's allowing you to? I wasn't sure.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. I'm sorry for the
No,
interruption.
you're
Go
okay.
ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so it is still disabled, so I'll wait just a second.
That's what I'm trying to figure out, is how to enable it. CJ, I know you're a wizard on Zoom. Do you have
If you
any
click
ideas?
on share screen, put it on multiple, and that should give her access. If it doesn't, you can make her a temporary co-host.
Okay.
But I would put it on multiple for right now.
I have it on multiple now. So is it allowing it now, Natalie?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, CJ.
Okay. So there we go. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Ma'am.
Yep.
Okay, great. So let me start this presentation. So GrantWorks, we're a grant administrator. We have been around since 1979. We have administered more than $2 billion in assistance for literally hundreds of localities across the state of Texas. We are all over Texas. And so we would love to be able to help you guys in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to move on to the client map tab that's in your binder. So that's going to give you a just kind of a rough coverage idea of what Texas looks like for us. So let me click through these. I'm talking faster than I'm clicking through my slides, as you can see, so I apologize. Let me get to the map here. We do have an over that 140 plus highly qualified associates. Our staff is now over 200. We've grown significantly in the last year. We've been adding to our team. Some of the services that we provide, aside from grant administration, is grant management. So essentially, if you hire GrantWorks, you will not only receive the benefit of grant writing from us, you will also receive the benefit of the management and administration of those dollars. So we have a full team of project managers who will come aboard, and they will handle all of the grant project oversight for you. We have a full environmental team who handles all of the environmental surveys that need to be done associated with any given project. We also have a buyouts and acquisitions team used for, which we'll go through here in just a bit, we use for certain projects under certain grants that are where that's allowed. We're really broad, we're really diverse. We have an amazing group of individuals that work with us. A lot of our directors that work for GrantWorks are actually retired project or program directors from the different administrations that handle these grants. So we've got former directors from the General Land Office that retired and came to work for GrantWorks, and our grant writers, or our directors and oversee some of our projects. We've got former employees that retired from Texas Department of Agriculture who were also directors there and have come to work with us. So we really have a really great group of people that come together and work really hard for our clients, and try to make sure that we are always looking out for the best interest of our communities, because that's important to us. There's the map that I was talking about. So you'll see that our county clients are highlighted in the dark green, and the counties where we have city clients are highlighted in the lighter shades of green. Now, the county clients also is also comprised of city clients within them. So you can see just how diverse we really truly are within the state of Texas. There's not a whole lot of areas that are in gray, so we really pretty much cover a broad territory. And we're very, very well versed in the world of grants. So I'm going to move into the first tab, which is Texas Department of Agriculture. And like I said, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I know we don't have a whole lot of time, and I have a lot of other information I want to be able to cover. So through the Texas Department of Agriculture, there are several different grant opportunities that are available to different communities. We have the Texas Community Development Block Grant. This one is probably one of the most popular areas under the Texas Department of Agriculture. A lot of communities receive these grants, and they've been around forever. The Community Development Fund is one of the larger ones. So this is the famed CD grant or CDBG block grant that a lot of folks are familiar with. It comes around every 2 years on a cycle. It is based on the your regional COG's list of priorities. So they set the priorities for what that biennial grant award is going to look like. In this case, Sandy Oaks is part of the Alamo Area COG Council of Government. So those priorities for this next round are going to be water and wastewater projects, septic tank projects, first time service, and water and wastewater to yard lines. The reason I'm talking so much about this one is because this is one that we feel would benefit Sandy Oaks, and we're, well, right now is the time to consider applying for this fund if it's something that you think would benefit, you're interested in. We certainly feel like it's something that would be great for Sandy Oaks as a rural community. The match would be, there's a match component involved in this grant, and you're going to find as I go on through these, there's a match component associated with pretty much almost every single one of these grants, which oftentimes can make it a little bit challenging when we're trying to apply for them, because the cities or counties have to really plan in advance and set some aside dollars for these, for grants. Now, I understand that Sandy Oaks is a newer community. You were incorporated in 2014. So the reserves for grant opportunities may not necessarily be as cushy as maybe some other areas, but it's something to certainly look into and maybe develop a plan as to how you can bring yourselves along to be in a better position match-wise to compete for grants that come around. So this is one that's going up right now, and it's for the 2021-2022 fiscal year cycle. But the grant writing process begins now. So this is definitely one that I would consider an opportunity for Sandy Oaks. Now, the next grant under TDA is going to be a lot of photos there. The Downtown Revitalization and Main Street Programs. This is a really popular grant. It is one where you have to do work in your downtown or Main Street district of your community. Now, the match can be kind of high on this one, and it does go into more detail in your binders if you'll follow along. Typically, this grant maximum used to be $250,000. This last round was a $500,000 round, which is a lot more than we've ever seen before. The best match opportunity here is 20%. I say it's an opportunity because you can go as low as a 5% match, but you don't get as many points on your application that way. So to be competitive, we always recommend that the maximum amount of match be put up by the community, so that way you can be competitive in this competition. It is a very competitive grant, and so every point that you can get, we want to try to get it when it comes to this grant. 50% of the requested funds have to be allocated to doing ADA compliant activities such as sidewalks, handicap ramps, handrails, even ADA parking. This grant is great because, for example, if we're going to replace sidewalks, you get everything redone. The water lines, the sewer lines, the drainage, everything that has to do with that sidewalk ends up getting replaced, including the parking spaces when you do this grant. So it's a really good grant. In my opinion, it just does have that high match on it. So then the next one that we move into is going to be our FAST grant. So the Fire Ambulance and Service Truck Fund. This grant, it's for cities only. The only downside to this grant is that you do have to be 51% or more low to moderate income. Now, I'm going to pause for just a second. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means. Because I did a little bit of research into your community. So because low to moderate income scores comes from HUD office. HUD gets those percentages after having completed an analysis on the census surveys that are pulled every 10 years. So right now we're working off of the low to moderate income percentage scores that HUD released after their analysis of the 2010 census. Now, since Sandy Oaks was incorporated in 2014, Sandy Oaks does not have the benefit of knowing what their true LMI percentage is as of right now. In 2020, the Census Bureau is currently conducting a survey. The survey data that comes out of this survey is going to be used to derive the next set of low to moderate income percentage scores from, for HUD. We don't know when HUD is going to release that information. It's a process, it takes time. So it could be a little while before we know really what the true data, low to moderate income percentage data looks like for the city of Sandy Oaks. One recommendation I would highly suggest is if you're not already involved with, if you're not already pushing for the response, the high response on the census in your area, if there's any way that at this point you can still do that, I would recommend that you do. The reason being, households that don't respond to the census survey end up being placed automatically at the higher tier level of their income. So they could be a low income family, but because they're fearful of responding for whatever reason, Census Bureau is going to put them at the higher income level, which ultimately ends up hurting the community because it skews that data. So it's really important for there to be complete local participation in that survey, because an opportunity for funds later on down the road or potential for future growth using grants is reliant upon accurate survey data. So that's just kind of a bit of advice there. But the FAST grant, what it's for is basically to provide fire trucks, ambulances. I've seen communities use it for to purchase Jaws of Life, rescue boats if that's what's needed in your area. Basically emergency vehicles that are used. So this is a really great grant. You can get brush trucks with them too as well. So this is a good grant to have. But again, the citywide low to moderate income has to be at least 51% or more above that poverty line. So this is something that we have to really consider when we're looking at a community like, like your community, Sandy Oaks, where we're starting to try to get that low to moderate income score in. So how am I doing? Trying to move fast here. So
you're doing, Natalie, you're doing just fine. And we don't need to rush you through here because I think it's a very important message that you're delivering here. So continue on.
Thank you. So the next grant is the Planning and Capacity Building Fund. This is probably one of my favorite grants. Let me go back, went too far. The reason this is one of my favorite grants is because there are a lot of communities that don't know what they need. They don't know what their needs are. And that's what this grant does. This grant offers the ability for you to plan, to sit down and have that discussion with local leaders and have community involvement to see what the needs are in your area. So it's really like, it's comprehensive as well. So it covers everything from housing to infrastructure and everything in between. So that's why this is a really good grant to consider. There is a low to moderate income component in this as well. I don't, like I said, know what Sandy Oaks is at this time. And since we don't know and we want to find out if we can get it, if the data comes back and shows that you're at least 51% or more LMI, this is a great grant to consider. Now that information can change, and please keep in mind, any of the criteria that I'm giving to you today can change from one year to the next, because these are all annual grants with the exception of the community development grant that's biennial, but even that one every 2 years, it changes in some way, shape or form. So keep in mind that if today it's a 51% or more requirement, next year it may not be, they may remove that tag. So it's just something to keep in mind. Now this grant has already passed. Well, the deadline's the deadline to submit an application for this one is September 1st. But it's something to look forward to futuristically. So I just wanted to really highlight this one because I think it'd be great for Sandy Oaks that's in those development stages right now. Does anybody have any questions right now for me before I keep going?
Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going. Okay. So the in the binder, I'm going to skip over a couple of pages, and we're going to go. It's not on the PowerPoint here, but if you've got your binder in front of you, you'll see that there's a page in there that's called the Texas Capital Fund. So that's infrastructure, real estate programs. We don't currently have any information yet for this fund. it is an annual fund. The TDA has not released any info. So unfortunately, there's not really much I can give you on what we know for the next rounds, but basically it's utilized for public infrastructure, used, to help business that commits to create or retain permanent jobs. So this is a really good grant too. We just don't have enough information at this time to really highlight some of the criteria there. And then the next page is your state urgent need fund. So this application is usually due within 6 months of a state disaster. You know, it's got to be a declared state disaster. And the urgent need fund is, must be, the problem has to have come also from a disaster, but no more than 30 days from the date of the event. So this is like, I know you don't necessarily suffer from hurricane damage, but maybe tornadoes. I don't know if y'all face tornado damage, but if you were to have a catastrophic event occur and just really wreak havoc on the community, and you really needed some urgent needs, this is something that would be a benefit to you guys. And so this is a good grant as well if you're in that kind of predicament. We're going to move over.
Natalie, I'm sorry, Natalie. On this particular one, is there a match component to it?
That depends. Sometimes it's based on the size of the population, and depending on the need, depending on the disaster, there may not be. So it just depends. It can change.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Then we go into, really quickly, the Department of Commerce says economic development. So EDA grants are really good as well. They provide economically distressed communities and regions with comprehensive and flexible resources. So really it's to address economic needs in a community or county. You can apply anytime until funding runs out. There's always an income component, and when we're working with something that's talking about an economically distressed area. So we don't know what Sandy Oaks is yet, but we'll get to that in a minute. So this is a really good grant as well. Let's go to Texas Parks and Wildlife. I don't know why this disaster relief is still sitting here, but we will go to Texas Parks and Wildlife, and let me here we go. Oh, it wants to start us all over again. Okay. So I'm going to continue talking while I get to the Texas Parks and Wildlife page. But Texas Parks and Wildlife, these are really good grants too. It's parks grants, and who doesn't want a park in your community? This one, there are a lot of different kinds of things that we can do with this grant. There are boating access grants if you're a community that's either on the coast, well, mostly on the coast. There are recreational trails grants. That one's a fun one. Target range grants, clean vessel grants. I know this wouldn't necessarily apply to Sandy Oaks. And then of course there's the local park grant. The local park grant is really good grant. It is got a crazy match on it. Normally you're looking at a 50% match with these grants, but it's a really good grant if you don't have any local parks and you're trying to accomplish one. It can even assist with acquisition to turn that area into green space. But just keep in mind, if you turn any area of your community into a park, it's in perpetuity. So it can never, ever in its existence ever be turned back into any other kind of development. It will always have to be dedicated as a local public park. I had a community recently that did this grant, and we're kind of beyond the opportunity to apply for this year, but we can look at this for next year if it's something you're interested in. I had a community who wanted to build a fence around it. it can provide security fences as long as it's always accessible by the public. So that to me is a really great thing. In this community, they wanted to make sure that the kids were always safe and the kids didn't have a way to get to the streets. And that's the whole purpose of the fence. But it can do a lot of really creative and fun, cool things. So it is extremely competitive, but it's kind of a give back to the community type of grant. So everybody likes the the parks grants. I should mention though, it is extremely competitive. So we always want to keep that in mind if we're going to do a grant with Texas Parks and Wildlife for parks. So I think we've caught up here on the PowerPoint. Let's go to TxDOT. So TxDOT, this one's a county grant. So I'm going to go through it quick because it's not really something that the city can apply for, but just know that it is something that we do. And it's something that maybe your county might be interested in the future. This round just ended. They don't do this every year. What it is started in 2014. TxDOT was given dollars. Well, they allocated dollars to go into counties and repair roads that were damaged by the oil industry. That's where this came from. So the target was really kind of a lot of the rural southern area of Texas where there was a lot of drilling happening. And so there was a lot of constant back and flow by these big 18-wheelers hauling that crude oil and even just pulling equipment back and forth. So started to tear up a lot of these roads that were not built well enough to support the weight of this traffic. So that's where this grant came from. They allocated dollars to go in and repair these roads. After the 2014 round, they realized how big the need was across the state of Texas. So we just saw our second allocation this year, actually in 2019 of this grant, same grant, it came around again. So it normally has a 10 to 20% match component, but the reason I'm telling you guys about it, even though you can't apply on your own behalf for this, is if your county has an allocation from TxDOT and they're able to apply for this grant, the project sites that are chosen by the commissioners. So if you're in a position where you have a good relationship with your precinct commissioner, your commissioner can submit a request for a project under this grant in your area if you have roads that have been affected by the oil and gas industry. So it's just something to keep in mind. And that just talks a little bit more about what they approved this last round, what the appropriations were for the general funds. So you can see there $250 billion from the general fund and funds appropriated by TxDOT to counties for roadways affected by oil and gas boom. So there's a lot of money that they're putting into these programs now to reinforce our communities and our counties. We're going to move into Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. This is another really popular grant, and it's kind of one of my favorites too, but I come from a background in housing, so this is always really special to me and close to me because I've seen the benefits that this has. And this is a feel-good program. It really is. This program here, I'm going to show you something. So Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, they have a broad variety of different programs. Most of these are service-based, which means normally we see nonprofit organizations and CHODOs that are stepping in, or housing authorities that step in to manage these. We might see, elderly nonprofits. Those are usually the ones that take upon themselves to really get into these programs, or community actions do a lot of these, but there's one that we do, and it is the Homeowner Rehabilitation Assistance Program, the HRA. So really it's known as the HOME program. And the way we use the HOME program is you can either build a brand new one or you can rehab a home. We don't rehab homes. We never rehabilitate a home. What we do is we totally demolish and tear down.
I think we lost her. Yep, she's gone.
She might not realize she's gone.
Can't hear you.
Here we are.
There you go.
While we're waiting on her to return, I did want to share something that was learned. She talked about it earlier about the basically the LMI, the low to medium income indicator, and that's been the hot topic since we were incorporated, talking about an economic survey, and it has been a very interesting journey getting to this point, because when I talked to the Bexar County CDBG office, they refer me to HUD. So I reach out to HUD, who refers me back to my local CDBG office. It was a vicious cycle. Natalie was able to find the information and explain that LMI comes from the census that is done. And once you have earned, I don't want to say earned, once a LMI has been indicated based on census results, it doesn't change. That is used for that entire 10-year process. So it's not something that we would have to be surveying residents or continually trying to keep updated. It stays in place for 10 years. So we are expecting to have our very first one once the census count is done. And there was something else about that I learned. And she did mention about the importance of getting the census done. So I know there are a few people here on this call right now who are part of the Complete Count Committee. I think it's important that the members of that committee kind of step up the game, because I know the enumerators are in the neighborhood. They're not being very welcomed by our community. They're being challenged. They're being thought to be suspicious. It's very unfortunate. I reached out to Richard today about that. We're not unique. They're encountering that everywhere. But the point is that the census is very important to us, particularly at this point in time, because we have never had this rating in the past. And this will determine whether or not grant funding will be available to us for some of the programs that she mentioned that will require that.
Hello, this is Natalie.
Well, your timing is impeccable. I just finished, I was kind of briefing people on some of the stuff we talked about related to the census and the LMI. So turn it back over to you and let you continue.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I saw my computer go haywire, or that it said I lost connection. So I thought I'd call in. It's probably the fastest thing. We left off on the home program. Bottom line, we don't rehab the houses, we rebuild the houses. So with eligible applicants who come from the community, if they're considered 51% or more low to moderate income and they meet the criteria, they can potentially get a brand new home built for them. They have to be the owner of their home. They cannot be renting. They can't have a deed that belonged to their grandparents that's still in the grandparents' name. They have to be the sole owners of it. So clear and free title. They also, well, they can have a mortgage, but they just have to be the owner of the property. There is a match based on the size of the population, and the city doesn't have to be 51% or more LMI. It's actually something that the city can just apply for as long as they're willing to put up the match. There's a 5-year, it's considered a reservation, so it's not really a set amount of dollars that they give to you. You get a reservation through TDHCA for 5 years. And within that reservation period, you can build up to 10 homes that don't cost more than $100,000. We have a model, GrantWorks does, of a home, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home that it costs $100,000 to build from the ground up, and it's brand new. So this is a really good give back program, and it makes the council look the city looks phenomenal, because this is really great for the constituents, for your citizens. So this is one of my favorite programs. I'm going to go over real quick to the General Land Office. We're starting to get into the hazard mitigation area. Under the hazard mitigation programs, although a lot of these are dedicated to areas that are along the coast, there are still some disaster relief funds that are available to areas such as Sandy Oaks, because you face very different challenges in that you do have tornadoes, you do suffer droughts, you can suffer wildfires, you can still suffer floods. It just depends. So General Land Office really handles a lot of the hazard mitigation programs. There's the Texas CDBG Disaster Recovery Grant. This one is very flexible. Okay, recently we used it with Hurricane Harvey along the coast. This one does have a low to moderate income percentage component of 51% or more, but that can always change, because with every disaster, they make different changes to some of these grants. So, but this can be applied to you guys as well if you have a declared disaster in your community. Then the next one is the Texas CDBG Mitigation Grant. We are currently working on these as we speak. This was allocated really just for victims of the Hurricane Harvey damages, and then the 2015 and 2016 floods. So one of the triggers for these grants is there has to be a state declared disaster area assigned first. Once that happens, then that's when FEMA starts teaming with the General Land Office and the Texas Division of Emergency Management to determine if they need to allocate funding for mitigation and remediation of damages sustained in a certain area or region. So these are really good grants, even though they're not necessarily applicable at this point in time. You never know when they could be. So it's good to know that we have them. We do offer buyouts and acquisitions. This is where I was talking about the buyouts and acquisitions team. We can use our acquisitions teams for park grants. We can use them for disaster relief. How are they used for disaster relief? Well, if we have an area that continues to flood, as we know, the floodplains change every single so many years. If there's a 100-year flood that takes place near your area because of a storm, FEMA will redraw where those flood lines are. When that happens, sometimes there are homes or buildings or structures in a certain area that are now declared flood areas. So to mitigate that, we can use programs like these, use our buyouts and acquisitions team to go out, buy out or acquire those properties and turn them into natural green space where we can never build on it again. And they'll relocate those homes if they were residential properties where people lived as primary homes. They'll relocate them to higher ground areas. So these are really good things to have as well. I'm gonna go ahead, and the next couple of ones are really more coastal geared. They're geared for the coast. So we're gonna move over to the TDEM grants, the next tab over after all of this, the Texas Division of Emergency Management. So this is just a continuation of pretty much what the GLO does. These are mitigation grants. There are different kinds of grants through TDEM. There are disaster triggered So we have a disaster, we get a declaration from the state. Now we have available statewide and available competition for those areas that were declared in that disaster. And the components, there's always a match. A lot of times it's based on population. But under certain circumstances, certain areas may not have a match depending on how much damage they sustained. So these change depending on the disaster. And then there are the yearly programs, which is the flood mitigation assistance and the building resilience and infrastructure and communities, also known as BRIC. Both of these are really good. You don't necessarily have to have a 51% or more LMI percentage on your community, but they're really competitive grants, and normally they're infrastructure driven to really mitigate your community if you're having flood issues in a certain area. The matches oftentimes can be a little bit heavy bearing, but if you have a need, this is something to consider. And this is a way to accomplish repairing or replacing infrastructure that is failing if you are not able to access some of the other programs because of the low to moderate income percentage scores. So these are good programs also to be familiar with. I'm going to skip to the Texas Water Development Board, which is very much similar to TDM. They do a lot of mitigation grants as well. And these are also repetitive flood claims or severe repetitive loss. So a lot of these have to do with loss due to floods. And that can happen anywhere depending on what your natural disaster is. So, and this is the same as what I just discussed as far as criteria changing depending on what whatever the disaster was. So this is also another program that's really good if you have are facing a natural disaster or have faced one. And then the final tab really just talks about our work performance. It kind of goes over the different things that happen when you work with GrantWorks. We do not charge for our services in the beginning. When we come in, if you hire GrantWorks to do a grant for you, 99% of our grants are written pro bono until the grant funds. We collect our fee when the grant funds and the money hits your bank. Until that time, everything that we do in the beginning is free. Now, there are a couple of grants, and when I say a couple, I really think there's maybe 2 grants where we charge on the front side of it because of how competitive it is. Most of the time is why we charge. Or the management oversight on that program may be only 12 months or 24 months because they're usually not big grants or big projects. But other than those 2 grants, everything else we do it for free until the grant funds. So that's one of the benefits of working with GrantWorks is that if for some reason the project ends up falling apart because it's not feasible, and that happens. Sometimes we get hired to come in and write a grant, and we start writing the grant, we're working with the engineer, and then come to find out that the project isn't going to work. We have no choice but to call the project a dead project. We can't pursue that application any further. We don't charge for that. It's just part of what we do. So we're okay with that. We do the construction management. So let's just say your project does fund. This is where your project managers step in with your environmental team. Your environmental team will work on all the environmentals. Once you get an environmental clearance on your project, then you can break ground. Once we break ground, the construction or the project management team handles all of the pre-con meeting with the engineer. They handle the oversight of the construction crew actually doing the work. We handle all of the labor standards. We do all of the employee evaluations and employee interviews as required by law, by the labor standards laws, and by Davis-Bacon Act as well. So really our goal is to make sure that you don't have to deal with really anything. We take on all of the workload to alleviate you guys of the burden of the management of these grants, which oftentimes worse than writing the grant is the management of it, especially if it's a grant that has an affordability period or has a management period of more than 5 years, which a lot of these grants have because they're big projects, especially when we're dealing with infrastructure grants. So GrantWorks really does do a phenomenal job of oversight on these things, and we stay with it till it's closed. So until the project finishes, we stay with you. We oversee everything, and when the project closes, we handle all of the project closing as well, especially with whatever grant entity we work with. We also handle all of the monitoring and all of the reporting. So when we're working with grants, there's reporting that has to be done. And sometimes it's quarterly, sometimes it's biannually, twice a year. But it just depends on the grant. Either way, GrantWorks handles that for you. We handle all of the documentation, so you don't have to deal with any of that, and we do the record keeping for you as well. And let's say a project closes, but 10 years down the road, HUD steps in and does a random audit. We have all of the record keeping done for you. So you don't have to worry about, 20 years down the line, HUD coming in and saying, we need to see these documents and we want to do a random audit. We'll look at it. And believe me, it happens. There have been communities that 15 years down the line after having completed a project, they end up having to pay the money back because something went awry during the project phase. Or they don't have documentation of things. So our job is to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. So that's one of the benefits of working with GrantWorks. We will help handle partnerships with any localities or agencies. So let's say you're working on a drainage project that's going to cross jurisdictions, and you're going to need an interlocal agreement with the neighboring community or county, or you're crossing jurisdictions when it comes to your drainage district, or it comes to your city utility district. We handle all of that for you as well. All the paperwork of the contracts, the MOUs, we do all of that for you. So those are just some of the other benefits to working with GrantWorks. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move into some of the key points. Mayor, I know you said that you started to kind of get into this a little bit while we were disconnected. I'm not sure how far you went into that, but I know that we did talk about the CDBG. We talked about the match components. One of the things I really wanted to talk to you guys about was, I understand that the city of Sandy Oaks used to be considered a participating jurisdiction with Bexar County and being an entitlement county. And it's my understanding that you have now opted out of that, which everybody sees it differently. In my honest opinion, it's probably more beneficial to you than anything else, because you have an opportunity now to be competitive with these grants. You can go after grants that are more directly related to the needs of your city, not needs related to a larger county or a larger city, as we oftentimes see with some of the entitled counties and communities. A lot of times those dollars that they get from CDBG are funneled to projects within their inner city areas and not so much their rural communities. And having the opportunity of not being affiliated with that county's CDBG grant means that you can now be competitive. You can go out and look for grants that are outside of just the CDBG. There's a wealth of grants that I've just covered that are not affiliated with CDBG that you would not be able to apply for if you were considered part of an entitlement county. So, I would, in my honest opinion, because you're considered a rural community and you have so many needs and you've just now been established, really only a few years ago as a city, that this is this is a good thing for you guys because now you can go after those funds that you probably so desperately need. You can start to continue to build yourselves up in the right direction in terms of doing planning studies, finding out what your needs are, getting your low to moderate income score criteria in so that you can begin to be competitive with these grants or compete for these grants. Talking about your low to moderate income percentage. We visited what that meant. I talked a little bit about, the history with Sandy Oaks and how you don't have that information quite yet. There are surveys that can be done to get that information until census data is pulled from after this year. So GrantWorks, one of the things we do is we have a full survey team. And if it's associated with a grant that we're working on, so I'm gonna pick on the CD grant because that's one where, let's say you're working on a target specific project, which means it's a project in a certain area of your city. It's not necessarily a citywide benefit project. If you're doing a target area project, but you need to survey about, 500 households or 200 households or less, that's something GrantWorks normally, under normal circumstances, can help with. Yes, COVID has slightly crippled us a little bit, especially when it comes to the door-to-door thing, but it is still a service we provide completely for free when it comes to a grant like that. Now, if we're looking at outside of a grant, just doing a citywide survey because you need one, we can help with that too. We've done it in other communities. We can do it in Sandy Oaks. There is a fee involved because it's not associated with a grant, but we can look into doing it for you to help you. There is another survey that's called a random survey. It is done through the Texas Department of Agriculture. GrantWorks can help with that, but there's a fee involved as well for that. That one, if you don't have, it's good because if you don't have enough time to do a full city survey, and I think your population is at about 4,600 people from what I looked at. If you don't have time to do the full city survey, you can do a random survey through TDA, where a certain percentage of your household population is selected randomly, and we would need to survey those homes, analyze the data, come up with a low to moderate income score percentage. That low to moderate income score percentage is used in lieu of a full city LMI survey. Sometimes we have to do that under certain circumstances, such as what we're facing here today with Sandy Oaks, that you don't have that data yet. So, or sometimes it's communities that have that data, but it's inaccurate, or the city feels like it's inaccurate because it could be that like I said or mentioned earlier, the participation in the census and surveys was not very good. So their LMI, could be 30%. Now, the way that works is it's split. So if you're 51% or more, it basically means more than 51% of your population is considered low to moderate income. Anything below 50% means that's how much of your population is considered low to moderate. Since then, with a lot of these grants, the national objectives are to target economically distressed areas. That's why so many of these grants target regions that have a low to moderate income score that's more than 50% of their population. So it's really important. That number is so critical when it comes to qualifying for grants, that's why the surveys are really, really important. So it's something GrantWorks can definitely help you with if it's something you want to look forward to. So I just really wanted to touch on that a little bit. And
I did, while we were waiting on you to join us, I kind of went over with the participants on the call about the LMI and the elusive LMI, as I like to call it, because we've never been able to,
yeah.
to locate how to get that done. But thanks to you, we have better understanding of that. At least I do. And so I'm noticing here, and I do have your presentation up. I have the GrantWorks capacity to perform on the screen for those who are watching. And then you're talking about the GrantWorks team includes a staff with the different qualifications. So is this like in-house engineering type services that are available as part of the grant writing program?
The engineering on a specific grant, any specific project or grant, is not affiliated with GrantWorks. We can't do that legally.
Okay.
So, because if it was legal, we would have engineers on our team to do it. But you can't be the grant administrator and manage the funds and write the grant and do all of that and be the engineer.
Got it.
It's against the law. So
Okay.
whenever it comes to a project, there has to be a separate hiring process done for the engineer, and then there's got to be one done separately for the administrative services. And I actually had that on my list of things I wanted to bring up. The CFR 200 law, and CFR, what that stands for is Code of Federal Regulations. And under that code 200, it discusses uniform administrative requirements when it comes to federal funding. So if you familiarize yourself with it and just Google CFR 200, it will bring up all that information and you can familiarize yourself with what those regulations mean and what they are. You'll learn what's legal and not legal when it comes to hiring and procuring administrative services, as well as engineering services for federal dollar grants.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for the presentation and for the binders. Those are very helpful. And if anyone on the council would prefer a digital version of that, Natalie was kind enough to send that to me. I'll be happy to, or Catherine can share that with you as well. So before we move to the next item on the agenda, and Natalie, I'd like you to stick around for that one if you don't, so that you could hopefully help us understand. I'm going to stop sharing that. Okay, so item 4D is discuss and or possible action on issuing requests for proposals, also known as RFP, for administrative services and requests for qualifications, also known as RFQs, for engineering services related to the 2021-2022 Community Development Block Grant Program administered by the Texas Department of Agriculture. And if I am not mistaken, that's the one that you and I spoke about, where there could be some funding, some opportunities for grants for some drainage projects. Is that correct?
Yes, so your area COG, they have set the priorities. The primary priorities are the ones I had mentioned, but the second priority is drainage is listed. But usually your first set of priorities for your COG region is what you really want to try to target. I can't get into too many specifics about the project because we've not been hired as your grant administrator, and any discussion beforehand of that or knowledge beforehand of that would mean that we would not be eligible to compete in an open RFP process. So I'm going to stop there. But but yes, ma'am.
Okay, so quick question then. We'll let you go here in just a moment. Before I let you go, does any of the council members have any questions on the presentation that was given by Ms. Gonzalez? Raise your hand. I do not see any hands raised. Okay, and before we go, I just wanted to ask you, oh, I'm sorry. I see Mayor Pro Tem Thomas Rapino has his hand up. Please go ahead, sir.
Yes, Natalie, I wanted to ask, you say you handle the administrative portion of the grant process. Does that mean you write the grant and you don't charge for that except on individual grants that require that? And then when you say you manage the grant process, is that a separate charge? That's all I was asking. That's all I wanted to ask.
In reference to the previous agenda item where we were going over, where I was giving the presentation of GrantWorks, yes, sir, you are correct. In your understanding that when we are hired as an administrator, we don't charge to write the grant. Part of our administrative services includes the project management. So it is all included in one set percentage fee. It is not a separate charge aside from the grant writing.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping for that. Thank you.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, and then for the TDA program that for the 2021-2022 cycle, is that calendar year or fiscal year?
It is calendar and fiscal year.
Okay, and what are the deadline, the time frame for submitting? If we decided to do that, what timeframes are we looking at that we would need to work within?
So TDA has that the deadline is in February of 2021 on their website for that grant. It is always, the sooner you're able to move forward with it, the more benefit there is to the community, because you can really spend a whole lot more time studying feasibilities of your projects and getting your projects together. But the official deadline to submit an application is in February. Also keep in mind that usually in December and in November, there's a slowdown of any kind of production because of holidays. And since sometimes the beginning of January, a little bit too. But yes.
Okay, perfect. Just trying to make sure we have what time frame we need to work within. Okay, any other questions for Natalie? Well, with that, I'm going to thank you, Natalie, for joining us and taking the time to really go through and prepare the binders that you did and explain the programs. And I personally found it very beneficial. I hope the council members did as well. Grants is one of those things that we hear a lot about from the community. From what I understand about grants, is it is a long process. It's not like you apply this week and you get funding next month. It's a year-long, 2-year, 3-year, or longer, depending on the grant that's available and the project involved. But
that's
it's
correct.
certainly something that we want to have available to us. So I felt that what you provided was very beneficial for that purpose, and I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And we will talk soon. I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Mayor. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank you, Natalie. You too. Okay, so we will move on to item 4D, which is discuss and/or possible action on issuing requests for proposals, RFP, for administrative services and requests for qualifications, RFQs, for engineering services related to the 2021-2022 Community Development Block Grant Program administered by the Texas Department of Agriculture. And the purpose of this may not be something that we want to move forward with, but I felt that it was something we might want to consider. And I don't believe that if a positive action were taken by council on this, I don't believe there is a commitment that we follow through on that. But without this, we can't even begin to pursue it, is the way I understood it. And Cassandra, correct me if I'm wrong. But we have an area in our community where the engineering work has already been done. This is the drainage issue over on Hilltop Peaks in Lowman. It's a very costly, the engineering estimate on that one was upwards of $200,000 to get the work done. we've already paid for the engineering piece of that. And so my thought was this might be a good opportunity to perhaps use this available grant opportunity to seek funding for that particular project. So that's the intent of having this particular one on the agenda this evening. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Alderman Tremblay, I see your hand. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, ma'am. So being that the engineer portion is done on that project, would that constitute the city's share or part of it for the project? Should we go for that grant?
You know, that's a very good question, and I think it does, but I would get back with Natalie and ask her that specifically. But you're talking about the match piece of that?
Right.
Yes, I will ask her that question.
Okay.
I think
And
I know.
I do see Alderman Rapino with his hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, in the grants, the HUD grants that I, or not only HUDs, but some of the others that I applied for and administered and managed, if you have already paid for part of a project, you cannot then expect to be paid for that part. So it may be different for this grant, but I know the ones that I have done, you know, we could not, expect payment for anything that we had already paid for before we applied. It may be different, but so I guess Natalie would know, and I think that this is a good way to go because it is hard to manage a grant after you, particularly HUD grants. It used to keep me up at night. But anyhow, that's not here nor there.
Yeah, that's good input. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I don't see any other questions. So if anyone would like to make a motion, now would be the time. Okay, then, oh, wait, I see Alderman Rapino has his hand raised. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'll make a motion that we, let's see how I do read this. That we, I guess, discuss and possible action on issuing requests for proposal or to approve that we would issue requests for proposals for administrative services and requests for qualifications for engineering services related to the 2021-2022 Community Development Grant Program administered by Texas Department of Agriculture. Does that make sense?
It did. Thank you. So we have a motion by Alderman Rapino to approve issuing requests for proposals and for administrative services and requests for qualifications for engineering services related to the 2021-2022 Community Development Block Grant Program administered by Texas Department of Agriculture. Do we have a second? I see Alderman Fillinger has his hand raised. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a second on that. All in favor say aye, and please raise your hands.
Aye.
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 Okay, that motion carries. Okay, I will follow up and with Natalie, and we'll see what we can do to get moving on that process. Okay, item 4E, discuss and or possible action on resolution 2020-118, authorizing the acceptance of donation of 2 vehicles declared as surplus property from Bexar County and designating their use. So back in April, I became aware of some vehicles that were coming up for being declared surplus. So I reached out to Commissioner Rodriguez's office by way of a letter and an email with a request for 2 very specific vehicles. If I'm not mistaken, it was Alderman Yelton and who all went on that, Catherine? Do you remember who went to see the vehicles? I don't recall, but they went to the surplus yard, checked out the vehicles, decided that they would work for the purposes that we needed them for. So we went ahead and submitted a request through Commissioner Rodriguez's office to the purchasing for possible donation. Last week at the Commissioner's Court meeting, that request was approved. So that is the intent of this ordinance here. And I'm sorry, resolution. And basically there are 2 vehicles. One is a 2013 Ford Taurus and the other is a 2013 Ford F-150. And the pickup truck is a 4-wheel drive and would be used for public works, which currently is using a vehicle that is not 4-wheel drive. And then the Ford Taurus would be rotated in as a general administrative, where we received by donation the Tahoe. That will be retrofitted for possible use for the Marshal's Department because it's already configured as a police vehicle, whereas the Expedition is not. So the intent is to accept by way of Resolution 2020-118 the donation of these vehicles that have been approved by Bexar County. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion? I see Alderman Fillinger has his hand raised. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I move that we approve Resolution 2020-118 authorizing the acceptance of donation of 2 vehicles declared as surplus property from Bexar County and use the F-150 for public works and the Taurus for administrative use.
And Alderman Rapino, I do see your hand raised. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Alderman Fillinger and a second by Alderman Rapino to approve ordinance 2020-118 to accept the donation of vehicles from Bexar County. All in favor say aye.
Ma'am,
Yes.
Aye.
the motion was for a resolution, not an ordinance.
Oh, that's stuck in my head. Let me do that again. So we have a motion by Alderman Fillinger, second by Alderman Rapino to approve resolution 2020-118 to accept the donation of 2 vehicles from Bexar County and designating their use as such. Now, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, and that motion
4,
carries.
5, yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item F is discuss and a possible action on resolution 2020-119 declaring public works vehicle as surplus and authorizing the representative for the city to execute the sale or disposal of the vehicle. So the item, the pickup truck in the previous motion is an upgrade for public works for a pickup truck. The pickup truck that we're looking to declare surplus here is the original pickup truck that was donated to the city back in 2015. It has served the needs well. It's still in decent enough shape, but the fact that we were able to secure another vehicle that is 4-wheel drive and is in better condition for the use that we need it for with public works, there's really no need to maintain this unit any longer, and I think it's in the best interest to declare this one surplus. So as I read through here, it talks about, there is section 2 talks about the declaration. Section 3 is authorization of sale or disposal. And it does say the mayor or the designee is hereby authorized to sell or dispose of said personal property through the advertisement and acceptance of bids for said property, as described in Section 2. If the city receives no bids, the mayor or designee is authorized to sell or dispose of said property in any manner in compliance with state law. I would ask that in your motion that a designee be identified. I'm okay with doing that. However, remember, I'm not always here. And if something needs to be signed, we probably need a local person who would be available to sign off on whatever needs to be signed for. So with that, I will entertain a motion from the alderman. Alderman Fillinger, please go ahead, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I would move that we approve resolution number 2020-119. And I would believe the best choice would be Catherine Yelton, the city clerk, to be the designee.
Okay. And I see Alderman Rapino has his hand raised. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Okay. So we have a motion from Alderman Fillinger and a second by Alderman Rapino to approve resolution 2020-119 and designating Catherine Yelton as the designee for any signators or advertising that's required to dispose of the vehicle. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, that motion carries. Let's move to item G. Discuss and/or possible action on property owner's failure to comply with the July 9, 2020 order of the City Council of the City of Sandy Oaks, Texas, ordering demolition of substandard building due to infeasibility of repair of 23102 Shady Forest. This was brought by Alderman Fillinger and Alderman Tremblay, so I will turn it over to Alderman Tremblay, who has his hand raised. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, well. Let me lower my hand. Didn't mean to leave it up there, but I did go pass by that property just last week, actually. I didn't go by today. I didn't think it was a requirement, being that the property owner did fail to take care of the problem by the date given, and we did give her an extra 30 days. So I guess we need to move forward with the cleanup. The neighbors have they're kind of sick of looking at it. I did speak to a few of them when I went by there. So I think it's our duty. We made the I wouldn't say the threat, but we gave the order for cleanup, and it was not done as city required. So I guess we should move forward with the demolition and cleanup.
Okay, and so along those lines, I did go by there yesterday. It does not look like anything's happening, and some of the concerns that we were having with neighbors calling, they were actually digging holes and burying the material on site, and that is not acceptable. So, in having a conversation with our city attorney, Ms. Ortiz, bringing this back before council is not a requirement. That was all addressed in the previous action that the council took. But because we will be spending funds and we are at the end of our fiscal year, I really wanted to bring this forward just to have it as a matter of public record. I do know that we do have the monies available in the budget to have the work completed. I do have a quote from HTEX, who has quoted us $6,500 to clear that lot. And because we're not required to be competitive, as I understand it, in this particular situation. So once the work is complete, then we will receive an invoice from HTEX, and in turn, we would send an invoice to the property owner, who has 30 days to repay that invoice, and at which time, if they do not, then a lien can be filed on the property. Yes, Alderman Tremblay, go ahead.
Yes, Mayor, being the fact now that we do know that the owner, they buried some materials on the property, do we have any legal or requirement to document that? Should there be something arises in the future that the soil there could be contaminated?
I will defer that to Ms. Ortiz. I personally have not observed that. I don't know if anyone has observed it that is part of this meeting here, or but just the calls we have received, and I have seen holes that have been dug. Now, whether they have dug and covered up, but that looked like that was their intent. So I will ask Ms. Ortiz to address the potential liability issue on what may have already happened related to that property.
Not knowing what was buried, if anything, or who put it there, it's hard to determine whether there would be any environmental issues or liability of the city. At this time, it could be a part of the demolition, though, if the company demolishing the property does find anything that they need to remove because it causes a danger, as a part of the substandard building and property process. But again, not knowing what is there or what actually happened, it would be really hard to say or make that any type of determination right now.
So from a just a overall perspective, basically, we would not need to require or request of the contractor to try to identify if anything's been buried. It would strictly be whatever's visible above ground. Even if it is in an open hole, the expectation is anything that's visible would be removed. Is that correct?
Well, if there are obvious holes or digging or covering or something that was covered up, then the contractor can go and remove whatever. If there is something there, go and try to make a determination whether something was buried underground or covered up as a part of the demolition.
Okay.
Mayor, so on your quote from HTEX, does that includes demolition and removal of all the
whatever is remaining standing? There's only, I think, one partial wall still standing.
right, and then all the stuff that's on the ground scattered all around. I mean,
yeah, and they had already started sorting through some of that stuff. Whoever the owner had working there, so it might be an easier cleanup for him. You know, there may be like scrap metal that he could haul in one load, and but we would leave that up to him to do that.
Is the expectation that he's going to leave a clean lot when he's done? Is that the expectation? Because
I don't. So here's my take on that. Much like the other property on Young Oak that was addressed, it was leveled and it was clean. The materials that were knocked down were cleaned up. Was it a totally clean lot? That's hard to say because we did not require him to go find the pieces that had blown off in previous years. It was strictly the structure that he addressed and removed. And really it's to address the hazard aspect of it, which the materials that are lying around, the still partially standing wall and the subfloor are the pieces that need to be removed. I don't know that there's a requirement that we provide a clean lot. We need to remove the hazard is what we need to be doing.
Right.
I understand.
And well, I mean, I would say all of the structure pieces that are lying around, being that they're metal, there's some tanks, I think there. So all of that stuff creates a hazard.
Exactly.
So hopefully it's all going to get cleaned up.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm done.
And so, Ms. Ortiz, I don't believe that we need to take an action on this one. This was really more for public record and clarification, if I understood. Is that
No,
correct?
the order provided all the action that the city needed. Just looking at the order, it did require all trash and debris be, or just in response to the previous conversation right now, that all trash and debris be removed as well as the substandard buildings. So as far as cleaning up the lot, any sort of trash or debris lingering would be a part of that. But if you're referring to weeds or overgrown grass and those type of things, then no. But yes, no further action is required by council.
Okay. Okay, then I will let HTEX know that they can go ahead and proceed with that. And we'll get that one addressed here. Should be clear within, I don't know if he wants to start this weekend, but certainly by the end of next week, that should be addressed. Okay, item number 5 is municipal court. Item A, discuss and or possible action on resignation of municipal court clerk and procedures for hiring a municipal court clerk. So Ms. Plate, who had been working with us since the court inception, has been a tremendous resource. She's done a fabulous job of getting the court up and running. Her experience, her attention to detail, all the work she did getting us here is very, very much appreciated. With everyone, life happens, things come up, and she had to make a decision, and she decided to take a different avenue, but it's one that will be much more rewarding for her. I think it's personal in nature, and I don't want to go into the details of that, and it's not bad, but we do very much appreciate the time and effort that she put into getting our court up and running. So with that, we do have a letter of resignation from her that it's not like you can't allow her to leave, but I will entertain a motion for acceptance of her letter of resignation. Alderman Tremblay, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Make a motion to accept the resignation of our municipal clerk. And do we want to discuss the
separate motion?
Okay, all right.
Okay, so we have a motion by Alderman Tremblay to accept the resignation of the court clerk. Do we have a second? I see Alderman Rapino, your hand. Is that please? Go ahead. Alderman Rapino. Put your hand down and take it off mute.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a second by Alderman Rapino. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that motion carries. Okay, so the second part of this item has to do with the procedures for hiring the municipal clerk. So the position is somewhat specialized, so experience in that realm is certainly beneficial, and Ms. Plate did have that when she came to the position. I don't know that it is a requirement. It's not a licensed or certified position, and I'm actually having conversations with a couple of individuals who were interested. I reached out to people I knew that may have some candidates that may work. We are nowhere near making a decision on that, but I'd like to ask the council how they would like to proceed. I think first and foremost, we should always post any available jobs on our city website as a general rule. But I would like to get some input from the council on how they would also like to proceed with that. And Alderman Fillinger, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Have you conferred with Judge Molina as recommendations or
Yes,
what she's looking
I
for
have-
in a
I have
court clerk?
reached out to Judge Molina. I have reached out to our prosecutor, who is Ms. Kassan. And I also just put a bug in Ms. Ortiz ear that if she were to hear of anybody that she knows that might be interested, to send them my way.
Okay, thank you. With those inputs, I agree that we should at least put the position available on the city website. I don't know, maybe with on the TML website. Just talking and making recommendations.
That's a great idea. And I see Ms. Ortiz has her hand up. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, yeah, I was going to also mention TML, and I think Leslie had mentioned a court clerk, the court clerk website and their association would be beneficial too.
Yes.
And then the employee manual has specifications of council action when they're advertising for a new position, such as the length of time, the advertisements, deadline, what would be included in an advertisement, but the council can probably use the same advertisement or description for the job that they used last time, and just determine where it would be posted and for how long, when applications would be accepted.
Okay. And I do recall Ms. Kassan sending me information about that. And I meant to ask Ms. Plate before she left if she was a member of that group. I did not get a chance to. Catherine's shaking her head, so we're going to say she's nodding yes. Do you happen to recall the name of that organization, Catherine?
I don't, but I think she was using the city email address, so I can check and see the name of it.
I'm looking through here to see. Oh, here we go. Leslie did provide it. It's called Texas Municipal Court Clerks Association, and did provide the website, which was texascourtclerks.org, and she also suggested TML as well. So there's 3 options right there, and then we can also we'll use for writing the ad for posting. We could certainly use the information that already exists in our personnel manual or employee manual. Let me get back over to the meeting because I don't see you guys anymore. Here we go. Okay. With that in mind, would anyone like to make a motion? Alderman Fillinger, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I would make a motion that we advertise the position on the city website, the TML website, and the Texas Municipal Court Clerk Association website, using the information from our employee manual.
Perfect. Okay, we have a motion from Alderman Fillinger to advertise for the position on our city website, TML, and the Texas Municipal Court Clerk website as well, and generate the job ad from our employee manual. And I do see Alderman Rapino has his hand up. Did you go ahead, sir?
Yes, I'll second that motion, Mayor. I'll second that motion, Mayor.
Okay, and I
Before
see Alderman Tremblay also has his hand up.
Yes, ma'am. We need some dates to
Exactly.
for when the advertisement will run, when the announcement will close.
If I may suggest or request that since I'm the one taking on the responsibilities until the position is filled, that maybe any potential candidates be brought before council maybe September 10th.
I would agree, the sooner the better, and I know Judge Molina has concerns because we don't have another docket this month, but our next one coming up is September, when is that, 13th?
It's right there beside you.
14th. So we may be having, we may have to postpone that court date depending on what the docket looks like. And again, Catherine is stepping up. She sat with Kathy Plate and they had been working together, so she understood some of the stuff, but not the whole scope of everything that is done. So it's a lot for her to take on in addition to the work she already does. So I think the sooner the better as far as referencing what Alderman Tremblay was stating about timeframes. And Ms. Ortiz, go ahead. I see your hand is up.
I was also going to suggest a temporary appointment of Catherine in the interim if she was sitting with Ms. Plate until that position is filled.
And a temporary appointment, oh, just to serve in that capacity?
Yes.
Okay. And would that involve additional money for her for taking on an additional role? Would that be a consideration?
That would be up to the council until the time that the position is filled.
Got it.
Because she would probably be, it would probably be overtime work for her that she may need to do. So it would be a temporary pay raise for that interim time.
Okay. Okay. Alderman Rapino, I see your hand is raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to lower it.
Okay, so we'll do this in piece parts. So we have a motion on the table now for Alderman Fillinger made a motion and Alderman Rapino seconded, which was to post the job ad on the website, the TML, the Texas Municipal Court Clerk website, and write the ad as identified in our employee manual. And then Alderman Tremblay brought up the point about a time frame. So again, sooner is better. Alderman Fillinger, would you like to amend your motion? And go ahead, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to amend my motion that we post advertisements on the city website, the TML website, the Texas Municipal Court Clerk Association. We post as quickly as we can and close on September 9th and bring any candidates before council on our September 10th meeting. Also appointing City Clerk Catherine Yelton as interim court clerk and authorizing overtime as needed for her to fulfill that duty.
Okay. Alderman Rapino, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
And I'll second the amended proposal.
Okay. So the amendment is, in addition to what was previously presented, is to post the ad as soon as possible with a deadline of September 9th and to bring candidates to council on September 10th. Also a temporary appointment of Ms. Yelton to the position and authorizing overtime as necessary for performing those duties. Any other discussion on that one? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Is Michael allowed to, I'm sorry.
Michael's not on the call.
Oh,
So we have 4 in favor, and Alderman Yelton is not on the call. I'm not quite sure when he left.
I'm not sure either.
So 4 is an affirmative vote, so that motion carries. And I will work on getting the job ad written, and we'll get this posted just as soon as possible. Okay, and with that, it is.
If I may, while we're on record, I did receive a text from him at 7:39 that he needs to go inside and rest.
Okay.
So
I will make a note on and you'll make a note for the record as well, that Alderman Yelton left the meeting at 7:39. Perfect. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we will adjourn. It is 8:26 p.m. And thank you, everyone. Go forth. Have a great evening. We will talk again soon.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, all.
Good night.